Hello my friends, I hope you're having a lovely day, and in today's video I'm going to talk a bit about Contra Rogue Corps, which is coming to the Switch on September 24th, 2019. I'm a huge fan of the Contra series. I've played every installment, and for the most part they have been really fun, simplistic, but excellent games, especially great for co-op, couch co-op. I just played Blazing Chrome, which is 110% a love letter to the Contra series, and I loved that game as well. It does what classic Contra does just as well as classic Contra ever did, so I just really loved that experience. We also had the Contra collection, whatever that was called, the Contra Anniversary Collection on the Switch, which added in a whole bunch of classic Contra games into one package and let fans revisit those games if they played them in their earlier days or try them out for the first time. So there's been a lot of things going on related to Contra lately, and now we're finally getting a new installment in Contra Rogue Corps, and right from the reveal trailer I was like, oh, I don't know if I feel good about this. One thing I'll say is that I think most people right off the bat thought that Contra Rogue Corps looked like a really ugly game, and I have to agree with that. I just don't find it visually pleasing at all. But as I've said in previous videos about multiple games, I don't care about graphics, honestly. I don't care how crappy I personally perceive a game to look. I will play it as long as the game is fun. That's what matters to me. So I just want to get that out of the way. I know a lot of people don't think it's a pretty game, and I agree with that. But my problem is I don't get the feeling that it's really a Contra game. Konami's been struggling in recent years to find ways to work with their classic franchises, and I applaud them for trying to do something with Contra. It's a new installment, and they're trying to stay at least somewhat close to what they feel is important to the Contra brand. And I just don't know if that's going to be enough, because from what I've seen, it looks more like they're using the Contra name to drum up some attention, but the game that we're actually getting doesn't really look too much like Contra. Let's start off with some of the positives. I've heard the developer say multiple times that co-op is very important to Contra, and I completely agree with that. Some of my fondest co-op memories are with the Contra franchise, so knowing that developers still recognize that co-op is really important to the game is a good sign. And then on top of that, they also say that the game needs to be very easy to understand, which all the Contra games are. You just run and you shoot, and that's all that there is to it. So those are some positive things. There are some people on the team who at least know some of the core aspects of what makes Contra Contra. It shouldn't be hard to understand, and it should let you take some friends with you along the way. Now, after that trailer debuted at E3 2019, some interviews started to come out, and that's when I started to notice some things that were making me a little bit nervous. One of the things that really stuck out to me was the new mechanic for guns, which, guns are a kind of big part of Contra. They have decided to make it so that your weapons constantly overheat. And if you let them overheat completely, you'll be unable to shoot for a decent amount of time while they go through like a harder cooldown. Contra games are about just holding on to the fire button and going completely nuts. You just know that enemies are coming from every which way, and you're gonna have to take them all out, so you hardly ever lay off the fire button. It all depends on what weapon you're using, I guess, technically. Like if you have spread, you're hitting the button rapidly, or if you have the laser, God help you if you have the laser, you're using a different firing pattern there. But if you have like the regular, rapid fire shot, you're just holding down the button and you're running and gunning, and that's part of the fun, because there really are that many enemies and that much craziness that you have to just hold the fire button down and hope for the best. And with Contra Rogue Corps changing the weapon mechanic to something where if you fire too much, it forces you into a cooldown mode. You have other special abilities and grenades and stuff like that, but changing that core aspect of Contra, I don't understand why they would do that. It's almost like they're forcing you to use these special abilities, and having special abilities is fun, and having grenades and stuff like that is great, but you're being forced to use it at the expense of losing one of the core aspects of Contra's gameplay. I feel like they should have those things in the game. I think it's fine that they have these special abilities and grenades and other stuff like that, but don't do it and then make me stop firing as well if I fire too much. Let me throw all of it in there at once. Let it be really over the top and crazy, which is what a lot of Contra fans expect from the series. They expect a lot of craziness all the time, so just let me add those other things on top rather than taking me out of the fight. The slowing down of gameplay bleeds into another area, at least from what I've seen in some videos, and this could be just because it's early on in the game, but I've seen different stages where this stuff happens. It seems like there's a lot of like in-game cutscenes and a lot of like voiceover that's telling you, hey, you gotta do this, or hey, go here and do this thing, or this is how you get around that, and just stuff that slows the experience down. And again, I really feel that detracts from what Contra is. There have been games in the past that I've played where the amount of cut-ins from, you know, voiceover or cutscene showing me something in-game or, you know, whatever it may be, has really taken me out of the experience and frustrated me to a point where I felt like playing it was a chore. And one of the things I really don't want in a Contra game is that kind of stuff. It just has to be extremely straightforward. That's what I want from a Contra game. That's what I appreciate about Contra games, that they don't do that kind of stuff, or at least the majority of them don't do that kind of stuff. You just get in there and you play. And sadly, there's not a ton. I mean, there are games today that let you do that, but there are many more that don't. They put stuff in the way of actually just going in and playing. And for some games it's necessary, and some games it's not. There's been plenty of Contra games where it's not, and it feels like it's part of the franchise's fun nowadays. You can jump in and be like, just a nice arcade experience where I can go and not worry about getting interrupted all the time. But again, I'm hopeful that the examples that I've seen of footage are few and far between rather than popping up all the time, but I'm a little nervous. One of the other things that has me a bit confused is the game's use of humor. I don't really know Contra to be a series that's like very tongue-in-cheek or anything like that. It was certainly inspired, at least originally, by early 80s and late 80s, early 90s action movies. So I guess looking back, there's some humor in that, like how much it really drew from those, you know, like Alien and Rambo and Predator and a whole bunch of stuff like that. So yes, there's a little humor there, but it was never intended humor, and Contra Rogue Corps is going for intended humor. They have really strange, over-the-top characters, and it seems like there's story elements that try and put humor in there, and there's all sorts of wacky situations between the characters, and I don't know, that... You know, humor is tough to begin with. Humor can be really hit or miss, and when humor misses, it really detracts from an experience. And, you know, when I sit down to think about Contra, or somebody's like, hey, name the things that are important to you with a Contra game, I'm not going to be like, the humor has to be there. I really want the humor. I'm not saying the humor in there is, humor being in the game is bad. It's not ever something I thought Contra would need. If the humor hits the mark, I guess it's okay, but, you know, I felt this, if I was going to find silliness in Contra, it would be the over-the-top situations, the one-man army kind of situation where one guy manages to take out all this crazy stuff. It's just so unbelievably silly, but it's still fun in an action-packed sort of way. Going for actual humor is a completely different thing, so I'll have to see how it turns out, but it certainly is clear from the trailers and some of the gameplay that they're looking to put humor as part of the gameplay. The last thing I'm worried about is the game's soundtrack. Now, I haven't heard anything that has made me worry. I'm just worried in general because I haven't heard anything. Contra has some fantastic music and has some iconic themes, especially for video games, and plenty of other Contra games have remixed and reused those tunes in different ways, and they're great classic songs. I'm not saying Contra Rogue Corps has to have those songs in it. I would certainly like to hear one or two of them, but when I think of Contra, I think of a series with good to great music. I mean, Video Games Live for a number of years did a little segment with Contra music, so I'm certainly not the only one that feels this way. Contra has some great music tied to it. So I'm just worried that the music isn't going to be as impactful with this installment. But again, I haven't heard anything where I was like, oh, that's bad. You know, I'm not judging it by any music heard in a trailer or anything like that. There's some gameplay that has classic Contra jingles in it, so that's something. I'm just, you know, if the music is bad as well as the other things I'm worried about, that'll just be an extra punch in the gut. That's my long-winded talk about why I'm worried about Contra Rogue Corps, and I hope I'm wrong, and I'm certainly going to tell you guys if I feel that way, because I am, as a longtime fan of the series, certainly going to pick this game up. I'm going to give it a shot. It's been a while since we've had a Contra game. I appreciate them trying to bring in new players with something new, a different take, and they say they're trying to pay respect to the Contra franchise in general, so yeah, I'm going to give it a shot. I am just worried about it. I'm going to go in with an open mind, but what I've seen so far hasn't made me excited, let's say that. Going in because of the goodwill that the series has built up, for the most part, over the last however many years it's been around. There's been a couple stinkers in there, but overall, I've had a ton of fun. So we'll see how it goes, and I'll certainly bring my opinion to you guys in a video and on our podcast and all that. So we don't have long to wait. Like I said, it's coming out next month. That's it for today's video. Thanks for watching, liking, subscribing, and commenting. It's very much appreciated. Also, a huge thank you to our Patreon members. I can't thank you enough for your support that you're giving over there. I truly appreciate it. It means the world to me. You guys doing what you do over there lets me do what I do here and all throughout Go Nintendo. So a huge, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for that support. And that's it. I'll be back tomorrow with something. I don't know what, and I don't know when, but it will be sometime tomorrow. Just who knows when I'll have a chance to do it. But until then, have a lovely day, have a lovely evening, and I'll see you in a few short hours.